This podcast is brought to you by Spirits and Distilling for those who make and drink great spirits. Join our free email newsletter for technical and creative distilling stories in your inbox every week. Learn more at spiritsanddistilling.com.
Woo! Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Craft Spirits and Distilling podcast. I'm your host, Molly Troop, and today is a very special episode. With me today is my co-host, Sydney Jones, as well as special guests Maggie, Campbell, and Jennifer Wren. Today we're going to talk about some industry items like a bugout bag. But before we get started,
G&D Chillers understands that each distillery's chilling requirements are unique. On every distillery project, G&D offers the front-end design and engineering your team needs at no cost to you. Sid Dellery from Filibuster Distillery says, from the design and engineering to installation and startup, G&D was easy to work with. We've had great customer service since commissioning our chiller, and I'd highly recommend them for any distillery system. Reach out for a quote today at gdchillers.com.
everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited to get to speak with you all about this concept of an industry bugout bag. Our industry is going through some interesting times. We're seeing a lot of change really quickly. And I just kind of want to dive into all of this and kind of bring it back to the beginning. So if we just could introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about how we got started before we talk about how the industry is doing right now and how we're all doing.
I am Maggie Campbell. I'm the CEO at American Cane. I've previously worked at Mount Gay in Barbados, Privateer Rum in Massachusetts, Germain Robin in Ukiah, California, and a number of other adventures, as well as being a consultant. And I got my start in wine because at the time, craft distilling wasn't very established in the U.S. I remember we used to all call each other when a new distillery would open. And I happened to meet Todd Leopold from Leopold Brothers before he had relocated from Michigan to Denver, and their crew. Got to meet their crew, got to know their stuff. And through him and Jake Norris at Stranahan's, got really inspired to pursue certification in distillation technology and studying fermentation and production, etc. And so kind of got my start working through fine wine into the spirits industry.
That's, there's a commonality there, Maggie. If, people who have come in contact with me, I was an actress in New York City. And this is way back in the 2006s, 7s. And I got an opportunity to interview to be a promo model for the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy spirits portfolio and wine portfolio. And I mean, the joke was always like, it was like this side gig that was it. It was like a side gig. And I started off on still and sparkling wines and worked with all their champagnes. And then eventually, by an accident, wound up representing the single malts. And that kicked off, as we just discussed, an over 20-year career in some fashion, interacting with, speaking about, working as a brand ambassador, working as a brand ambassador manager, in the specifically single malt industry, and love every piece of it. I currently am not working directly in the industry. I run a life and leadership coaching business called The Renway, which is one of the reasons I'm here on the podcast today.
Awesome. It's so nice to meet you, Jennifer. I know you, Maggie, very well. And if you guys are listening, you probably know me. I'm Sydney. I am the co-host of this podcast. I'm really excited to be here recording with Molly because we do this like every once in a blue moon. It's a really nice way to catch up. I am a lead distillery technician at Heaven Hill Springs Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky. I work for Heaven Hill. And I've been in the industry for about 9 years. I've worked for several distilleries. I've made just about everything under the sun other than tequila, which if you listen to my episodes, I talk a lot about that. Tequila is the white whale. But really excited to be here talking to you ladies today about an industry bugout bag because it's needed. There are a lot of really weird, turbulent things happening in the industry right now. But before we go any further, Maggie or Jennifer or Molly, anyone, can someone define what a bugout bag is for those who might be listening and don't understand, or what you interpret as a bugout bag?
Well, a literal bugout bag is this idea, it comes kind of from, and I want to be sensitive about using phrases, but prepper culture, that I gotta leave right now. Right. So I literally have a bag that has, ID, certificates, social security cards, first aid kit, gloves, respirator. It's literally, if there's an emergency and you got to bug out, right? You got a bag full of tools. And, this came from, and Molly, correct me if I'm wrong, we had a conversation in Portland, Oregon with the Spirited Collective. There were a bunch of incredible women got together for that. And this idea kind of first came up in the sense that a lot of women in particular, this affects everyone, but women in particular, do not put together a kit of literally their resume, their accomplishments, projects they've worked on, stats, network of people that they can reach out to or things that they can present when they may need to get out of a very toxic job situation. And that was kind of the metaphorical bug out bag that we're referring to today. I will say from personal experience, and this is a lot of years ago, but I was with an organization, this was way before the spirits industry, and I had worked on like 5 or 6 really serious projects. And then I left the organization. And I realized in my next interview process, I had taken nothing with me. Nothing. I didn't have PowerPoints. I had built catalogs, like literal physical catalog. I remember thinking, are you insane? And I never did it again. And I'm really lucky to have had that happen to me at a very young age, because now, I have documentation of my entire professional history on my Google Drive. And the joke I laugh about sometimes is I do steal from myself. I'm like, that was a good idea 10 years ago. We can still reuse that idea, because it was mine. But I think that's kind of where this stemmed from.
Jennifer, that was a great explanation. That's exactly a bug out bag. I like to think of it as it's not like gloom or doom, right? It's just being prepared, and protecting yourself in the ways that you can. You never know when something's going to happen, and it could be just something, to help if you have a great opportunity that lands your way and things move really fast and you want to be really prepared for it. Or it could be for the worst case scenario. But it's always good to think about tools that would come in handy if that time does come, and how to best move forward in the industry or outside of it. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on bug out bag?
I think that it's important for us all to hear, as someone who kind of comes from a company leadership point of view, that it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be as charged as I think we make it. It doesn't have to mean that you have a serious problem with someone. You might, and if you do, that's very fair. But ultimately, if I am treating my team well and I'm giving them great opportunities and they feel valued, then I'm not afraid of them receiving other offers. I'm not afraid of them connecting with other people. And in fact, it's better for my business if they are out there impressing people across the industry. And, it is the role of leadership to create the space that people want to be in. And so, for anyone who might be hearing this from that leadership side as well, like, it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to be upset about. Like, honestly, if someone wants to leave, it probably wasn't the right fit anyway. So, and people can leave really peacefully and well. I think, I don't want to speak for anyone else here, but I know if people transitioned away from a role, not because it was an acrimonious situation, it just wasn't the right fit anymore. And I think that's okay too. So I just want to make sure that, we all take our work seriously. It can become very hyper-personalized. I think that's something we'll probably talk about as well. And ways, I've changed the way I work. I've changed the way I approach work to feel a little bit healthier and happier and realistic about, okay, what is the relationship? But it doesn't necessarily, having a bug out bag isn't necessarily a threat or a warning. It's a wise thing that should be good for everyone, and is a motivator for leadership to ensure that, they are creating value for their employees, because ultimately it is an exchange of value, and when the value's not there anymore, people will leave.
Maggie, I think that's such an excellent point, because I do think that we can surround this with, there's an emergency. I gotta bug out, right? That sounds very, but I think where I also see people tripping themselves up is oftentimes they may want to go, to you as their leader and plead their case about why they deserve a title change, why they deserve more money, why they deserve and they have not collected any evidence of their contribution to the organization.
Exactly. Like, this is all part of the course of feeling strong and powerful in your stance when you do go and ask for these things. And it's good for the company to have this data to know what it is you contribute and value you appropriately. Because if they are missing that piece, good people can leave. And I don't think people understand how shocked companies are sometimes when good people do leave. And part of what I hope to talk about today is how to maybe not get to that emergency point, but take the pressure off, make it a longer term thing. It doesn't have to be, I've put off these conversations forever, or I'm in such a toxic situation, I feel unsafe. I think, unfortunately, that's an extremely common thing to happen at work, and there's nothing wrong with you if you've ever felt that way at work. But I hope that we can give people some peace and some confidence that it becomes, hey, I'm noticing this pattern, and I've addressed it clearly and directly. And okay, I'm going to take steps today, instead of it becoming, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. And then it's an emergency move instead of a prepared, secured, rooted move, which honestly is better for the employer and the employee for having it be a smooth transition.
Yeah. Tools for documentation, tools for advocacy.
Yeah,
Both of those things are really important.
I love all these things that Jennifer and Maggie pointed out. When I think of a bug out bag, I think of, it's a survival kit. But what is survival? Survival doesn't necessarily mean you are trying to find a way forward to maybe another position. Survival can also just be you're trying to survive maybe a shitty situation at work, or you are trying to survive maybe a period of burnout or depression or something like that, because Lord knows that happens. I had this really cool opportunity to sit in on this coaching session, and it was with this company called Sane. It's career coaching for women by women, and they're based in Chicago. They're amazing. My company had them come in and present to our women's employee resource group. We did this awesome talk called, Rise and Roar. Like, how do you equip yourself? How do you build yourself up in the workplace? And something that really stuck with me was they recommended keeping a list of your wins, not even necessarily for you to pass on to another employer, or if you're job hunting, but just for your own edification, and just to know that if you ever deal with imposter syndrome like I do, you have evidence just right there on a list saying, no, I actually am good at my job. I've done this, 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 and this. And it's something I've started doing for myself. I have what I call an employee win tracker. I do one for myself, and I do one for my 2 employees under me. And I keep track of any certification, any training, any shout out they got at work, anything at all. It could be the smallest, dumbest thing in the world, but if it's something that I think might be helpful for them mentally on a shitty day, or maybe a few years down the road, if they are looking to further themselves, then I want to write it down, because that is ultimately what builds people up. And that is what fortifies this industry. So that, in my opinion, a bug out bag doesn't even have to be for looking forward. It can just be to help you survive the now,
Yeah, I think there's the phase of coping, and then there's the phase of, okay, what is in my emergency Tupperware by the front door, because a wildfire is coming and I need to have it ready. And I think it's both. And people who have worked with me will laugh, because I know they can all see it in their mind right now. But at the start of any quarterly review, yearly review, whatever, first slide is always wins. Team wins, personal wins, everything I've touched, any wins. And that's just keeping it top of mind, etc. So these are the coping phases before the wildfire is coming. And then, unfortunately, I think we've all, life is long. We've all faced situations where it's been okay, I need to act now. And did I have myself pre-prepared, or am I reacting to an emergency situation when I'm on the back foot?
We were going to discuss toxic productivity today. And I think this is actually a really good place to kind of begin digging into that a little bit, because one of the problems with toxic productivity, and let me give you a little bit of a definition, this is this idea that I really always need to be producing work, not work. I am always in motion, and I cannot not be in motion. And if I'm not in motion, I feel guilt or shame. Okay. So when we circle back to this idea, especially, and I love how Maggie is talking, about leadership. I think you and I are very aligned, Maggie, is that, when we are in this constant producing mindset and we are not doing the things to fill our cup, to rest, to take a break, to read a book that we love, to all these gentle things, right? We don't listen to the signals that our brain and body is telling us. And then we get into job situations where, I'm going to use the metaphor of the fire again. I am in LA, so it's a little dangerous, but we've been on fire for 7 months, and then we finally actually have a full burnout. And when you begin to address all the insidiousness behind toxic productivity and really break it apart and look at what you're doing to yourself, you would have started listening to those signals 7 months ago. And you might have had the opportunity in a grounded way to walk into your leader's office and say, hey, this is some stuff that's going on with me, and it's really an issue, and I'd love to proactively address it. I'd love to proactively come up with a plan for this. But, we do, Molly, you said, people hold things and they hold on to it, but there's the combination platter of being afraid to approach leadership, but also punishing themselves. And that's when you have, and we've all experienced this, where you pick up the phone and you say, I'm not doing this anymore, which I've done, by the way. So I think that's part of it too, is for the leader, to not be buying into the productivity monster either. So they're in a grounded and present place to listen. Mm-hmm. And for the employee to not be buying into the toxic productivity monster. So they feel when they feel resentment, when they feel dread, they can name it and then do something with it, which, as Maggie said, is good for everybody.
Yeah. And it's hard and it's scary. I really like how you acknowledge the power dynamic. Me as a boss telling someone to do something is very different than that report telling me to do something, right? The power dynamic isn't fair. It's not even. And that is really scary. And you are the boss of your life. And that is how you have to approach it is, this job is supposed to give me A, B, and C. And in return, I give D, E, and F. Is that equal? Is it not? Is this a challenge we're getting through, or is this a pattern of behavior? And as scary as it can be, and that is absolutely real, the only thing you can do is control your choices in the situation. And sometimes that means my health is at risk and I have to step away now. And that's fair. And maybe you don't have the ability or the wherewithal or are able to dig deep and do the conversations that you want to do. But I do encourage, if you can, express clearly how you feel. Because, okay, worst case scenario, your boss doesn't like you as much anymore. Well, it sounds like they didn't already. I think we get really scared about the boogeyman of the what if, well, if I tell them I'm unhappy, this could all happen to me. And that's true. And it's scary. And this is where work is so much more than just the 1 + 1 equation, right? But at the same time, I have seen so many people, myself included, just not advocate for themselves to try and stop the train before it gets to emergency village. And it's that's all we can do. That's all we can control as the worker is, we only have so much control in the situation, but that means we have to really have both hands on the wheel of what that is. And this is where we can get into all of this, but if there's 2 things I could implore everyone to do, and I know it sounds simple, and I know we think we've all done it, but also just if you don't already have a budget, life is hard. People don't pay as well as they used to. Things cost too much. Life is really hard. But put down what you spend. Put down what you have coming in. Please make a budget. Please try to get yourself some savings. My husband always says the only purpose of money is to make life go more easily. This is a tool that you can have in your back pocket so that you have choices. And it's really effed up that this is how it happens to us, right? Choices are limited by those resources. But if that's something I could tell everyone to do tomorrow, the power and strength it will give you to stand on your feet.
That's part of the bug out bag, Maggie. I mean, truly, And as you said, that's the FU money, And again, when we use these phrases like FU, it sounds like very dramatic, but I absolutely encourage everybody, especially female-bodied people or female-identified people, to have enough to bridge a 6-month gap. Like that's solid. A year if you can swing it,
Yeah. Sid?
Yeah. So this is what is going to be really hard listening for some people who are tuning in, who are distillers, who may have only been in this industry for a few years, and you're in it because you love it and it's your passion, and you think, well, I have to grind this hard because this is what I love and this is what I want to do. Baby girl, it don't have to be that hard. You don't have to grind that hard. And I am guilty of that. Early in my career, I was very much seduced by, like we're a team and we're making beautiful things and you're contributing to making those beautiful things. Meanwhile, not paying me a living wage, not paying me benefits, and me having to work 2 jobs on top of that distilling job to pay my bills and still living under the poverty line. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
Do not sacrifice your passion and your love for distillation and distilled spirits for surviving.
Yeah,
It's
leader
not
to
worth
leader,
it.
I just got to say to our peers, like, we have to pay people reasonable, comfortable living wages. Like, sometimes I hear what people are being paid. I can't believe it. Like, I'm like, how could you? I couldn't sleep. So I think that, something I'll put out there as part of people's bug out bag. If you have a job description and you want to send it to me, I will put a price on what that job typically pays, because I have a lot of consulting experience. People call me for advice a lot. I can do that. So if you have key holding privileges, if you're expected to operate independently on blah, 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 you send it to me, I will send you back what a fair market price is. And if you need to take that into your negotiation, you go for it. Like, that's what I'm here for. So I'm going to just put that on the table as an element for a bug out bag if anyone needs it. Done it in the past, happy to do it again. People did it for me in my early days, and it helped me a lot.
And to add to that, make sure that you have a job description.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, I've worked at places that did not get you a job description. They hired you and they told you all the things that you're supposed to do, but it was never written down, and it leads to a lot of confusion. So bare minimum, have a job description.
Have a job description and don't take the humility title. Like, if you are the master blender, do not be afraid to call yourself master blender. If you are the master distiller, don't be afraid to call it, because larger companies, that stuff really matters. And you want that on your resume. Like, don't take it foolishly, but I think some people I see as like extremely qualified professionals who are clearly a master distiller. I'm like, I actually told one of my peers recently, I was like, honey, I need you to go in and ask for a title change. Oh, well, I don't want to seem too big. How long have you been in this industry? Oh, 15 years. Yeah. Take the title, please. Like, do it.
There's another thing, like little thing too. Like, okay, do some confirmation with your workplace. Use Maggie as a resource, but don't just believe that that's the industry standard for pay. Also, do not believe that it's the industry standard to not do health insurance or any benefits. Like,
1,000%.
That should be an option. If it's not, some places still don't have it, but it is not the industry standard.
And there are some states that require it as a law. So if you're in a state that requires it as a law for workplaces and they say they can't do it for you, they're breaking the law. So look into that too. That is something I've seen small businesses try to get away with.
Yeah. I want to respond to a couple threads here. That's cool. One, you guys may know this in the podcast, but it's good for people to know this in general. BevForce every year does a white pages of standard salaries across the industry. They are not as good with things like distilling, but they are super good with marketing, sales, leadership roles, and they've gotten a lot more specific with titles for our industry. That's an excellent resource, especially if someone's just coming into the industry, right? The next thing that I think was so important too about the bug out bag that we've talked about, Molly, is what Maggie just said. It's like, if you can be of service to another person in this industry by offering insight, expertise, just mentorship support, and go both ways. We need mentors and we should be having mentees, because every job I have ever gotten was because I had a strong professional network. Like, I am good at what I do, but those getting around the LinkedIn posts, all that crap is always the strong professional network. So that is invaluable. But I did really want to also jump back to what Sydney said that I think is so important. I was on a call the other day with an industry professional consultant who is a friend of mine, older than everyone in this room right now. And I was talking to them about going back into a role. And I said, I think the thing that I would do it differently is I'm just not going to give it all away. And they were like, I've never heard that phrase before. I was like, yeah, boo-boo, save some for yourself. And I swear she had like a come to Jesus moment. And this is somebody significantly farther in their career path just from years, right? And you made me think, Sydney, about my first year as a very, very highly visible brand ambassador. Like the big job that kind of set the tone, right? Big job. And I was working, what's like Hamilton, why do you write like you're running out of time? I was working like there was a devil on my back. I mean, just trying so hard to make myself believe I deserved the opportunity. And all of that was shame, was love me, pick me syndrome. All of that was coming from my insides. The company I worked for was not asking me to work that hard. I was outperforming every ambassador on the team tenfold because I was making myself sick. So I think that this is something too that we really need to be clear with our leaders what the expectations are so that we don't decide that we are not productive enough. And in the end, what I was bringing to the table was actually not necessarily what they wanted. That's a big one too, right? So I'm running all over California with a whiskey bottle in my hand, making myself sick constantly. And I wasn't even really giving that leadership what they were searching for at that time, which is interesting, right? But I was too afraid to have a conversation because that leadership situation was toxic.
Yeah. And that's the second half of the formula that you as the worker can't control.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was talking to someone about the Masters of Wine because it's really high pressure and they were really scared to their company, where it's like, we have your back studying, but then like also assigned a ton of work. And I said to that person, if an employee comes to me and goes, okay, well, these are my commitments. I am full up. You've asked me to do this. Is this the number one priority now? Do you want me to set this aside? If they come to me and self-manage their time and their priorities and are clear with me about what they can do well, as opposed to doing everything, but not well, exactly to your point, it's like they aren't hitting the mark of what I need. I need them to do these 3 things really well. And these like 10 other things, like they're just not as important. Like I need you to do these 3 things well. And if you can do 13 things, okay, barely, it's such a worse performance. It's such a worse delivery. But again, like that's a different leadership approach. That said, like self-management is like so key for all of this because all you can manage is yourself. You can manage up all you want, but like it's only going to go so far. You can't control other people. So being able to say like, hey, I really want to make it, like I care about this job. I personally am a very competitive person. I love succeeding at work. It's like, it's a little bit of like, it could go too far sometimes, but for me, it's like, if I just say, what's like the number one thing I can do to like wow you right now, like, or in the next 6 months or whatever, like, then I know what I'm focusing on. And like you said, I'm not wasting energy, because I just cannot waste energy anymore. And yeah.
So my next question then for everyone here is, you mentioned that you had this employee who was studying for something. They were maybe doing too much, but they weren't focusing on what they were needing to focus on. In terms of your bug out bag, what do you ladies think are, worthwhile resume builders? This could be education. This could be job experiences. This could be things that AI picks up on your resume when you submit it via LinkedIn or Glassdoor or whatever. What do you guys think is what separates like one employee, a potential employee from another? Because this is something I talk about constantly with my mentee who is about to enter the job market.
Yeah, I do not want to see a long list of generic responsibilities. I really love, and this is feedback I've gotten from headhunters, heads up, If you give your resume to someone, you ask them, what was good about this? What was bad about this? You don't just let it go. You say, what can I change? What can I do? Whatever. For me, I really love to see like increased production 3x with a budget of blank resulting in Y. Like, I want to see accomplishments described in detail. Like, oh, I have forklift certification. Great. Like, if that's what's needed for the role, great. But like, I really want to see examples with numbers and data that you understand what's valuable to the business. You've achieved those things. You can make them happen, could run X amount of runs, increasing, I had one employee who went through our recipe and cut back on a lot of ingredients to achieve higher yield. I was like, write this down right now. Like, this goes on your resume. Reduced raw materials, 20% increased output. Like, this is really, really what I personally want to see. And yeah, more specific, thoughtful things instead of a large list of generic things. And if anyone ever needs me to look at a resume, I do that all the time. Happy to do it.
I'm going to echo that, Maggie, because I think it's really important from a brand ambassador perspective, from a marketing perspective, right? So I can put on my resume, I make people feel really good and I make them want to drink your product, right? And that is a truth. But if you're in one of those, what I call soft influence jobs, it hurts you not at all to say, oh yeah, I mean, I created an excellent trade program and I trained 1,500 trade members. Like, that's real. Like, the 1,500 is real. Whether the program was good or bad is like, hard to necessarily measure. But then I can say, okay, I trained 1,500 people and these accounts from that training brought in X amount of cases. So it's real data.
Yeah.
And
with X amount of reorders. Because for me, I see like, oh, you opened an account. Great. But how many of them reordered is going to be my next question. So answer it for me in your resume so that it's there. And I already know you're a high achiever. When the next person just said, open this many accounts, I go, oh, well, then how many did reordered? They didn't say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like hard data, and that was the thing for me when I talked about my early years where I didn't record hard data. At that time, I was working in not-for-profit and I would build live and silent auctions. Okay, so I would literally everything from requesting donors all the way to executing the night of. And I didn't have any of my data. In 2014, I raised this amount of money for the organization, or in 2015, I was able to get X amount of in-kind, whatever, and now obviously I'm not too worried about auction data, but that's the stuff I'm talking about. That I think Maggie and I are totally aligned on this, like real data and data that showcases that your buy-in to the job was greater than what you were asked to do, which is different than running in place and looking busy in the job that you are in.
1,000%.
To follow up on that, it is also different than doing a job and not getting paid for it, doing a job that is over. It's such a fine line where like you should be overachieving and you should be striving for exceeds expectations, but you should not be doing an entirely different job with an entirely different pay grade. So that's a very tricky thing to differentiate, but it is something that you need to sit down and really consider. Am I doing the job of someone who is paid 3 times more than me? And it's a joke I make all the time when someone asks me a question that is definitely for my supervisor. I'm like, yeah, I'm not paid enough to answer that question for you. No. And I joke about it, but it is kind of true. Make sure that you differentiate that, because 100% shoot for the stars, but don't shoot for the stars in a way that you're not getting appropriately compensated.
Don't shoot for the stars and then shoot yourself in the foot.
And the next person who looks at your resume is going to question your professionalism. Do they even know this industry? Like, this isn't, and then they're going to, unfortunately, a lot of people will try to take advantage of that. So know that, like, if you think, oh, well, I don't want to have this conversation now because I don't want to lose my job, blah, blah, blah. Just know, like, if you don't have that conversation and then you go to the next job, that problem's just going to follow you. And, if you need to negotiate like a package so that you could say, oh, my package was worth XYZ, as opposed to just like the salary or whatever, like, do that.
I am just picturing a listener who is like an experienced member of the industry who's listening to this and just thinking, I haven't done this. I haven't collected the data. How do I go back? And do you guys have any tips for, I haven't done this yet. How can I like recover some data, or how can I like at least do something that's helpful moving forward other than starting doing this?
A portion is having that network, right? So, I still probably have, I almost said like embedded, like they're sleeper cells, but I still have a person who works at every company I have ever touched that I could call and would be helpful that way. So, that's one thing, right? So once that's lost or enough time has moved on, the data might be gone. But there was a time when I started getting really serious about putting together some of my previous work in the industry. You can literally go onto the internet and be like, event in, like, I'm just making something up, in Palm Springs, 2006, whatever. And you can find images oftentimes because they might have been taken by the press. You could often find like magazine, with ambassadors, there's a lot of magazine articles and PR. A lot of that's still living, it's still present. So, do the best you can. But then the other answer is start literally today. Like just immediately. Who can I call that has this thing? Who did I work with that will, and I think a big one in that category too is like, you don't need to be friends with everybody you work with. Like you just don't. But it is good to have positive relationships with people in your company because they can help you with problems like this.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think that network's really important. And so how do you build that network, right? I think is the next question, especially do people ask. And for me, really important, if you're in a position where you've done any interview or even a podcast, get that contact person's email or contact information. Ask if it's a corporate place and the PR person controls all of that, ask for it. I want to write a thank you letter, write a thank you. Set 2 hours in your schedule if you can. And I know this is hard, guys. Like, I know it's hard, but set time every week to work on contacting people, calling people, set a reminder, I just had a great conversation with so-and-so, I'm going to put it in my calendar in 2 months to like follow up because I just care about this person. I get too busy. I forget to call. Like do it and stick to it and stay in touch. Always send thank you. You have no idea who you're going to end up working with. Jen and I have been doing this, 20 years apiece. And there are people I never thought I would work with. Right now, I'm sourcing rum from E&A Shear. 10 years ago, everyone would have been Maggie's the make from scratch lady, right? But I also had people calling me saying, I'm going to start a rum company. I want to source. Would you know anything about this? And I'd say, oh, you know who are the best in the business? E&A Shear. And I would make sure that I personally sent that email and linked to those people. And I never thought I'd work with them, but it's just the right thing to do. When people help you out, it means the world. Help other people out. And then you just have no clue when 10 years will go by and you're calling up that person saying, hey, so guess what? And they already know you. And that goes such a long way. And you think, oh, well, what's this used to be, et cetera. Don't think that way. Think, you know what, when people have picked up the phone and helped me, and that's the other thing I encourage you to do. If you do have an ability to help someone and they express that they need that help, just pick up the phone and do the thing. I can't tell you how many people just didn't for me in my career, and I remember them. But I really remember the people who did pick up the phone, and really made a call and really helped me out. And it makes me want to help out other people. It's just the right thing to do, and it can only breed goodwill and build this network.
Maggie helped me out because I called Maggie before I interviewed for Heaven Hill. I talked to Maggie and I talked to Nicole Austin, and I'm like, this is a big corporation. I don't know what I'm doing here. I've worked in small craft distilleries. What should I expect? What should I prepare for? And Maggie and Nicole both gave me invaluable advice. They helped run through interview questions with me. Also, side note, interview practice. Oh my God, interview practice. A lot of companies, especially big corporate ones, if you are a craft distiller who is potentially going to apply to a larger corporate setting, will do the STAR method. They look for situational type things. So having a list of situations where you acted or responded, or you thought flexibly, or you were creative, having that reference already ready to go is going to be very, very good for you when you go into these kind of star interview situations. As far as, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I run a still every day and I fill barrels and I can put that on on a resume, but I don't know, quantifiable data to put on this. I don't know what I can do to showcase how productive you do. You know that. You use an accounting software. You do TTB reporting. If you don't, your supervisor does. Ask them. Ask them how many barrels you filled this year. Ask them how many proof gallons you produced this year. Ask how many SKUs that you worked on. Ask how many bottles that you bottled. That's data that you should have a right to, as an employee. If you're working on that, just ask. They will probably tell you, and you can probably find it in your software as well. And that's not being snoopy. That's you being an informed employee and understanding where you're working. Especially if you're trying to become more productive, you need to know what your baseline is if you're going to make any sort of impact on your yield going forward. So that's information that you should be able to find, because the government literally mandates that we have that information on hand, Yeah.
And ask them, how did I impress you this year? Was there anything I contributed that was really important? Because you might not think it's important, but you don't understand that that's what that manager takes. Like Jen's thing earlier of I trained 1,500 people. Do you know how many managers would love to say, oh yeah, my team's responsible for training 1,500 people? Because the people higher up might really care about that factoid more than another one.
I think that this is all really good information, and that I can see a listener also thinking, okay, you guys are talking about networking a lot. What if I haven't networked? How does one network? How do you meet people? What's the best way? What have been avenues for you guys that have worked out well?
I would say first and foremost, I'll say one thing real quick and then I'll let Jen take over. But if you are going to approach someone, ask them, do you have the time and space? Ask consensually. Don't just, I cannot tell you. And unfortunately, I do think it breaks along certain demographics. How many people just send me a message, hey, tell me blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hello, my name is, who are you? Do you have the time? Do you have the space? Do you have the energy? I'd really love to connect with you about blank. Start there.
I completely agree with you. And I think a big one for me, now there's another thread I want to pick up here too, but a big one for me was, when Maggie brought up this idea of when someone asks you for help, and you are capable of helping. That's all, obviously that's the consensual part. Help them. That is the greatest networking you will do in your entire life. Because I became known in the industry, and I think I'm still really known in the industry as the great connector, because people would always ring me up and I'd be like, oh yeah, I know 5 people that do this and 6 people that do that. And this chick wrote a book and, and I do it. I love it. I love connecting beautiful people, and that alone built my network. I'm not even talking about just showing up at tails. I mean, just being a person who helps and uplifts other people is the greatest networking tool you'll ever have in your life. Now, the second part of that, though, is when you choose to not help and you could have helped, as Maggie is pointing out, I think we all have somebody that pops up at our heads when we know this person that's always coming with their hand out and is never available when you might need a helping hand. And that's the worst thing you can do for your networking, is to be constantly asking and never, ever, ever giving. Now, on a basic just ABCs of getting into this industry, I would say first and foremost, there's so many brands. I'm in Los Angeles. There is literally a list on WhatsApp of brand events happening right now. There's probably 150 in the city today. Just start going to events. Start shaking hands. Meet the ambassador. You might meet the distiller if they're in town, right? So that's a baby networking, costs you nothing. Then you have the next step of trying to go to some of the larger events like BCB, Tails, PDX, all the events that happen all over the country. If you can get yourself there, go there, start shaking hands. It's as basic as it can possibly be. Go there, attend seminars, ask questions, start shaking hands. The biggest advice I would give circles back to Maggie again, and then follow up. Because it doesn't matter that you bought a ticket to Tails and you got drunk for 3 days if the connections you made there, you never reach out to again. And following up, and I mean this with as much love as possible for our younger people listening to this, it is on the onus of the person asking for assistance to drive the conversation of follow-up.
Yep. Offer the times, offer the dates, send the Google invite.
Yes.
It's how it is. And ask. Like I am here being like, I'm offering all this help. I will tell you 2 people will contact me in the next year over it. Like do make the ask. You're not bothering us if we are offering. That's the trick. It's the offering. But even at Tails, I really admire certain teams, and I would totally be like, hey, do you guys need help packing in or packing out? Do you need someone like, oh, you're running a big event? Just text me if you need me to grab ice. I'm on my way. And you start these conversations by saying like, oh, you're going to be a huge presence at Tails. Let me know if you need any volunteers. Like, here's my number. You can text me if you need someone to make an ice run, and then be reliable. Right? That's the follow through.
Yeah.
And also like being someone who is easy to work with is great. It goes a really, really long way. And at the same time, be you. I think a lot of young people reach out to me and they go, oh, well, I just want to make sure I appeal to everyone. And I don't want to because I have a pretty strong platform of who I am. And I'm very queer inclusive, very outspoken. Ashton Berry and I used to run the show Treacherous Waters about relationships between Black women and white women and femmes. I'm pretty out there about who I am. And that means the people who are excited about the work I do can find me so easily. I might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I will attract the right people very easily. So I try not to be negative or aggressive or put people off. I try to be easy to work with, but I also try really hard to be me. I don't need to appeal to everyone because I don't want to work for everyone. I want to work for people who do what I do. And in my position right now, working with Black founders is something I'm really excited about. Working in the Caribbean with an incredibly diverse team is something I was really excited about. And these are challenges people knew I wanted and I was in for and supported and had experience with. And I attracted the right people. And I think that's really important to put out there, that part of this bug out bag is what is it that you do offer? Being someone who's easy to work with, but also someone who isn't going to just be another piece of paper on my desk that has a generic job description, number 17,
Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback on that too, Maggie. Do not gossip.
Right.
I wish I had learned that as a younger person. It never serves you. It never reflects well on you. And it will come back to you. So younger people out there, in your toolkit, be known as the one that keeps their mouth shut, keeps their nose clean, and is pleasant to be around, and is not gossiping. This is a very small industry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Cindy.
To piggyback really quick, just side note, in addition, don't gossip. Don't talk shit about other brands, any other brands. Ever. Publicly, don't do it. It could be a producer that you don't care for. Don't talk any brand at all. This could be a large brand. It could be a small brand. Don't talk shit about other brands. Don't do it.
So I'll challenge that in that sometimes it's important to be honest about things that are going on, because it shows that like in the rum world, there's certain controversies, especially around power dynamics and neo-colonialist attitudes. And I think it's important to not go out and shit talk. I think it is important to know the industry facts and be able to discuss them intelligently and discuss challenges and discuss factual information. I would say if you have heard something secondhand, let it lie. If you have not experienced it and you don't know it's fact, I will fact check myself as I'm talking. I have to know this is fact if I'm going to bring up a challenge in the industry. But I think that for me personally, if someone tries to be too benign about things that are very well known in the industry, I'm a little bit cautious about their ability to communicate critical thinking. That doesn't mean gossip. It doesn't mean shit talk, but it does mean if something is wrong, if there's a very clear situation where abuse has happened and you firsthand like have an experience or opinion on that, if you're trying to placate people or et cetera, it can be complicated is all I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't turn a blind eye when like there are factual things to discuss, like, but gossiping and shit talking, understood and completely agree. That's not the place for it. But I do think that there are times to address challenges honestly and clearly with critical thinking and solid factual information. But if you are new to the industry and you're at the bottom of this power dynamic, that is not your responsibility to be in charge of. Please hear that. It is not the people at the bottom end of the power dynamic's responsibility to set things right in our culture, in our society. Leadership starts at the top. We are responsible. So don't feel like that's on your shoulders to have to like be this warrior about you. That is not an appropriate expectation of labor. And at the same time, like, for me, with certain controversies in the rum industry, if someone tried to pretend something wasn't going on or they didn't have an opinion on it, I would be a little bit like, oh, I don't know. So just as a heads up, I don't know if anyone wants to push back on that or...
No, 100%. My shit talk was, oh my God, that vodka, that brand, ugh, that's so gross. You should drink my vodka. It's so much. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay,
don't do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about systemic inequities that need to be addressed. We're talking about like here's Glenfiddich and here's the Macallan, and these are the differences between them versus Macallan sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
but you can
like,
also
you know,
say this brand faces some really serious challenges. You know,
yes,
those are current issues in the industry. Yeah,
I got asked a lot about it's just as I was a woman in whiskey about everything around Bullet constantly.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just from being a female-bodied person in whiskey during that time. And I was just like, I'm not going to stand here and give you my 17 different opinions about this when I don't actually have, as you said, Maggie, direct first-hand information. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, so yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, how do you feel about being a woman in spirits or a woman in whiskey or a woman in rum? Like, are we over that question? How do we feel?
We're a little
I feel
over
tired,
that question.
exhausted.
1,000%. But another part of your bug out bag is like read your industry newsletters. Like, as I'm talking about current events, current challenges, controversies, like having an informed take on what's going on. Industry newsletters are like free. They come right to your inbox. So Mark Brown, if anyone needs that link, you just shoot me at Half Pint Maggie on Instagram. Just the classic drinks ones. If you guys need a list, maybe we can put it out on like a story or something during when this comes out. Like, you don't have to like read everything super in depth, but if you can open each one and like read 2 or 3 things every day, like you will be so far ahead if you can just discuss trends. I can't tell you how much you sit down with a distributor or, you know, even just if you're the person filling barrels and you say, oh yeah, I could see why we're pursuing that idea, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The manager is going to hear that and say, this person has insight. This person knows what's going on. And I think that's way more valuable. That has gotten me so much further in my career, which honestly came to me through the Masters of Wine day 5 exams of current events, like being so up on industry data at that point in my life, like 10 years ago. It was like, it really opened my eyes that being able to have those detailed discussions are the number one thing that can really get you noticed and be someone people call and talk to. And, you know, someone approaches you and says, oh yeah, you know, we're thinking about doing this kind of product, and you can have an intelligent conversation about it. Like, they will notice that immediately.
Can I say something controversial as well?
Please
that
do.
I think should go into a bug out bag?
Doesn't have to go viral.
Something very controversial. Find or have something in your bug out bag that defines you outside of distillation, outside of distilled spirits.
1,000%.
Outside of whiskey or rum or vodka or gin or malt whiskey or agave, whatever else. Find something else. Find a passion, find a hobby, and you don't even have to be good at it. I'm terrible at it, but find something outside that gives you different shiny edges, because we are multifaceted individuals. We are human. We cannot be wrapped up in one huge thing, because A, that will burn you out, but B, we want to hire people. The employees that I've hired, I didn't hire them because they were the most passionate person in the room about their job. I hired them because they were good guys and they're knowledgeable, and yeah, they're good at their jobs, but also because we mesh well. We have similar interests, we have similar values, and we're friends. They're my employees, but I see them as people, and I love that they're people. I love hearing about their families and their hobbies and things like that. So cultivate that. Do not let that fall by the wayside. Remember that you are a person who was on this earth for less than 100 years, and cultivate that and let it shine. It's a good thing if you have other hobbies and you like to read, or you grow houseplants, or you run triathlons, or whatever else. Honestly, that might set you apart, believe it or not, when you're hiring or when you're interviewing or whatever else.
1,000%. When someone's job your job should not be your life. Your job should not be your life. And when someone's job is their life, I know that when we go through a challenging time, it is going to affect them so much. And when we go through a good time, it's going to affect them so much. And it's just a recipe for the highest highs and the lowest lows, and not a lot of balance or integration into their life. And that makes for a worse employee. And so it's just being able, exactly like you're saying, you are more than your job. You are a fully formed person. You bring a lot to the table, and we all want to see that.
And I think a good tool to kind of help, because you definitely need something else. Something that helps you get that something else is boundaries, and knowing to place them, knowing to take the time, and that it's okay to take the time to be a better version of yourself, to be more than your job. And boundaries are hard, and it is the theme is, talking to the powers that be, talking to the people around you. And that is sometimes putting up a boundary and saying, hey, I'm not available for this. And for someone who is a highly productive person, who loves what they do, who's super passionate, saying that, hey, I don't have time, I need to do this, that can be very hard. But it's okay. You need to have that hard conversation, and you need to have some space. That is okay to ask for.
I want to pick up a thread. I'm so glad you circled back around to that, Molly. Because we were talking earlier about this idea of consistently being asked to do things outside of your job description consistently, and I'm going to speak about a client for a moment. I'm going to be super vague to respect their privacy, but I had a client, many and most of my clients are in the spirits industry in some fashion, my private clients that I work with. And this was a person that was working at a distillery, full-time job, full-time in the distillery, production, 12-hour days, making it happen. And at this particular place, they were having a bunch of issues in retaining staff and also affording staff for the visitor center. So they just expected this person to then work 8-hour shifts on top of their production, no pay, because it was a good thing for the company. And it was a positive experience, and they knew so much about the product anyway. And you got take one for the team and help everybody, right? And this was causing my client so much, not only just resentment, obviously, just growing resentment, but also a feeling of unnecessary guilt, because it trying to keep the doors open. But what I conveyed to them at the time, and I really want to convey to the listeners today, because we said this earlier, every time you as a young person, or, as a female identified person, maybe a BIPOC person, every time somebody that's in one of those, groups does that, it hurts all of us. Every single one of us, our time is devalued, our worth is devalued, our capability to have boundaries is devalued. So I think a lot of times specifically, young people think they're taking one for the team, but they're actually literally hurting everyone that came before them and everyone that came after them. And it sucks. And it reminds me a lot of being an actor, because back in the day, in musical theater, maybe some summer stock company would be like, oh, we can't pay you that. You'd be like, but I can't live if you don't pay me that. And they'd be like, yeah, fuck you. There's 25 girls behind you and they'll do it for free.
because their parents are rich, so they can take less, which then creates an entire society where the only people who get to be artists are wealthy people. Anyways, Nepo babies. Not that I'm talking about the art culture here, but I mean, it's the same thing, Maggie. Because
if the I perspective, like how many of us have either been told directly, oh, like someone will do that job for free, so like kind of trying to limit power in the situation to make you feel like you have to do whatever it is that they're asking. Or have you also had a friend in the industry who's experienced that?
I think all of us have. And this is where it's really important to develop these scripts. So you are not thinking in the moment, right? Because especially people who have trauma in their life, being able to process information and say the right thing at the right time and not 2 hours later in the shower be like, oh, I should have said this. Having these scripts saying, it's really important for me to do my job well. If I'm doing an 8-hour shift at hospitality, I'm not able to succeed on the floor at the distillery. And that's really important to me. And I don't want to let you down. So I don't think this is sustainable. Just having the positive way, you can see how fast that came out of my mouth. These are these scripts that you have to have prepared. It's important for me to do my job well. Can you understand that doing this, this, and this means I'm not going to perform at the top? And I don't think that's like safe and valuable to the company. Just having this lingo ready. And if you need to use ChatGPT to get there, if you need to talk to your peers, how many times have we all called each other to get help with this type of stuff? Have those scripts ready before you need them. And think about like the 4 or 5 things that have just kept coming up in your career, the things that are cliches that you'd face, and be ready to do that. And then just constantly investigating because even if you've had training in it, you need to go back to it every 6 months. How to set and then how to reinforce boundaries. Reinforcement's the hardest part, guys. How to set and how to reinforce boundaries. And then I think another thing to really look into that's just important to have is really look into what is a good apology. Like I have a very strong philosophy on what a good apology is. And if you can, for me, it's, name the harm done, how you're going to repair the harm, declare that you are sorry, and then there's all these steps to like how to do a good apology. If you're comfortable apologizing when things go wrong and it's just not an in the moment emotional supercharged thing, and you're like, okay, how do I apologize the right way? You say, you know what, I messed up because this happened. This is the harm that it caused. This is how I'm going to make it right. This is how I'm going to be sure it doesn't happen again. It's so much easier and so much more comfortable. It will make you such a better professional. It will make your relationships go better. And I think that's part of your bug out bag tool as well, because you do want to exit a company well. And that's something I take really seriously, if you can do. And it's hard. Sometimes situations are unhealthy and it's not your responsibility and it's not your fault. But in thinking about how you can get the absolute most for you, because that's what jobs are about, lest we forget. Like, if you can exit well, do. And just knowing, hey, this is how I reinforce a boundary. Hey, this is how I apologize when something goes wrong. So that in an emotional moment, you don't have to do that juggling, all the better.
All right, listeners, I just want to do a little recap of what is in our bug out bags. And everyone, when I get to the end, feel free to add anything that might have been forgotten. So 1 is a budget, because you never know. 2 is... that 4 is white pages for salary and to make sure that you're being compensated as you should. 3 is network. 4 is resume. So that is details, data into your accomplishments and what you've achieved. 5 is boundaries. And Maggie just added 6. Figure out how to be good at apologizing. I wrote, what a good apologize in my notes as I was listening. I was like, that is terrible English, but I apologize for that.
I think that's perfect. Yeah. I think that's really a very good place to start. Everyone's bug out bag is going to look different, and that's okay. Find what works really well for you. But part of that networking is, talking to others about your bug out bag, figuring out what other people might be including in theirs, whether it's, a specific skill set or a specific population that they're networking with, or even intel that they might have on potential employers and if this is a good place or a bad place. So that sort of thing, a bug out bag is not a static thing. It continuously evolves because we continuously evolve and this industry is continuously evolving. So it's not something that will happen overnight. But But that's kind of the fun part, is developing this bug out bag, which is really just resiliency and professionalism on your part. And that can be a fun thing to do.
Yeah. And
I'm going to give a lucky number 7 if that's cool.
do it.
And obviously I have a little buy-in here, but I think everybody in their life, within the means of affordability, but you also can get these support systems for free in some places, a therapist, a coach, a mentor. Because when you do the work on yourself and you build resiliency and you build a peaceful inner life, you're not going to be so emotionally reactive when things go badly. You're not going to be so emotionally reactive when you get feedback that you don't want to hear, and so much of the work that I've done with my coaches, with my therapists, with my mentors, a big one that I've really integrated into my current life, and one of the reasons I'm a more peaceful person, is when somebody comes at me with a request that does not feel like a yes immediately, I don't need to respond immediately. I can say, hey, I'm going to take about 24 or 48 to think about this. I'll get back to you. So, and that's such an easy change in your dynamic at work, but it puts you in such a strength to strength position of not being hyper reactive. So I'm all for, if you have access to those things, put them into your professional life.
Yeah. And if you are in a culture of nonstop urgency, everything's an emergency, that needs to be a giant red flag. That needs to be a huge red flag that you are freshening up this bug out bag. When you are looking for work, do not be afraid to put it out there that you are looking for work. I think this is the thing I see. People stay in these bad work relationships for far too long until they are not. It should be an equal benefit. You should say, I got everything I could out of that job. It benefited me fully until the end. And as soon as it wasn't the thing benefiting me and benefited them way more than it did me, this isn't an equal equation anymore. It's not how it's supposed to work, guys. And if it's a sense of urgency all the time, that's huge. That's a huge red flag that like you were saying, Jen, you're not able to think critically if you're under pressure all the time. You're saying, stop, let me think about this. They approach you about, we need you to take over these responsibilities with no pay. I'm going to really need to think about this, guys. What are your other options? Stop, slow the train down, because that sense of urgency will push you to do things you would not do. And that's why it's used. So just be aware of those things. And then, put it out there. Put it out there to your network. Put it out there as far as you feel safe. But I would say so often people tell me they're really scared to say they're out looking for jobs. And the second they put it out there, they're surprised at how it goes. So I know times are tough right now. I know stuff is really scary in our industry. I have total empathy for that. Be safe and keep yourself safe. But also, we are often so afraid that we are no longer taking the correct steps for ourselves. And ultimately, just be really honest with yourself about what that work relationship is. How much are they really willing to give you, and how much are you really willing to give them? Because in some cases, you can have a really understanding workplace that is really supportive and can earn some of your goodwill. But if that goodwill bank is empty and they're not going to make a deposit, ask yourself about the goodwill deductions.
Ladies, I think this has all been amazing. Honestly, really edifying for me, because these were kind of some things that I was doing. I was I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing, but I'm just going to have these resources in my back pocket. So it's really nice to hear that other people have this level of just craziness, not even craziness. That's me downplaying it. It's nice to know that other people are as thoughtful as I unintentionally was with kind of having these things developed and in my back pocket. I think this is going to be really beneficial to a lot of people as they navigate some really kind of uncertain waters right now. So before we wrap up our conversation, just a reminder that for more than 30 years, G&D Chillers has had the proven solution for distilleries. Visit them today at gdchillers.com. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, go to spiritsanddistilling.com and sign up for our free newsletter featuring news stories every week from some of the best writers and distillers in the distilling world. Always amazing content there. If people want to learn more or taste for themselves some of the results of the projects that you've been working on, Maggie and Jennifer, where can they find you? Where can they dig a bit deeper? Is there any social media or anything like that you can share?
Yeah, American Cane is the project I'm at now. I'm incredibly thrilled for it. Super positive work culture and really glad to be part of leadership there. And we are working on our first release. It should be out probably around the time you guys hear this, August, late July, August, maybe a little later than that, but it'll be out. You'll see it. It'll be called Banter. So we always love some good banter. And it will be a delicious rum. And then my personal is at Half Pint Maggie. And I would say Instagram is probably the easiest one to message me on now. Who knows what anyone's even using for social media anymore. But of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well, Maggie Campbell.
Maggie's got great F1 content if you're an F1 watcher like I am. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah. And, you can find me. I am at therenway.com. So that's WREN, like the bird. I offer a multitude of services. I work with organizations like, BRGs, ERGs, and teach gentle leadership and really leadership that's very heart-led and very calm and present. And then I also work with a private client base. And on that side, that wing of the bird, I refer to myself as a joy coach because I help people get out of systems of toxic productivity and walk towards what lights them up, bringing joy back to their lives. And that is a joy. And I do work with a million people in the industry. So if you're interested in bringing me into your organization, I would love that. Let's talk. And if you're interested in coaching with me privately, you can schedule an appointment. And I am also on LinkedIn. So just Jennifer Wren, you can find me. Maggie, I'm never on Instagram anymore. It's terrible.
I know, right? I'm like, do we even use this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't even know.
But what a pleasure. What a pleasure to be here with you two today, Sydney and Molly. This has been a great conversation and my first time really getting to spend some time with Maggie. So super fun.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Look at us networking.
Networking in action.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. And as always, Sydney and I are here to answer questions as well. So
thank you guys for listening today. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another in-depth distilling conversation for you. As part of that networking, you are more than welcome to reach out to myself or Molly at any time. You guys most likely already have our social media, but I am SydNeat, NEAT_Jones on Instagram. And I'm pretty responsive to that. I've gotten some really fun messages from people that I love getting every time. So send them to me. And Molly is on Instagram as well.
I am whiskey.biscuit. Forever will be. And then I love getting messages on there. I'm also on LinkedIn quite a bit. So whatever way you want to contact, I'm happy to have a conversation.
I'm on LinkedIn too, but I'm really boring. You're not going to find anything fun there. I'm way more fun on Instagram. Yeah, you'll see dog pictures on my Instagram. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Spirits and Distilling for those who love to make and drink great spirits. Join our free newsletter today at spiritsanddistilling.com for pragmatic, technical, and creative distilling stories in your inbox every week. Sign up now at spiritsanddistilling.com or click on the link in the show notes.